died in his seat right now, and he would have no way of knowing. Ricky at least rubbed his chin, some sign of life.
Just a staring contest. I think that Ben is easily winning.
Right.
I don't think he's blinked yet.
No, not even close.
I'm actually going to keep my eyes on Ben to see. Okay, he just did blink. Okay.
All right, he's good.
Yep. All right, he's ready to game. So, again, both players sitting at 4-1. Round number 6 here is going to be underway. And, again, a Borosmir. One of the last things I expected to see coming into here. Sacred Foundry and just pass the turn back for Ben. So, a little slow start as Sidher does have a Judge's Familiar, so he's onto the board first. Going to take a look at the 1/1 flyer, and we'll take a look at it with you as well. Card that you normally do see in Mono Blue Devotion. But it's finding home here. Ben probably checking to make sure that it can't force spike a Precinct Captain, which it cannot do.
I would actually believe that he's checking. I believe he has a Johnny Vengeance in his hand. He was checking to make sure that
Johnny Gold or a Johnny Caller,
yeah, Caller part rather. Sorry, I think that he has a Johnny in his hand. He was checking to make sure that he couldn't touch that.
Gotcha. You do see Judge's Mirror can only target an instant or a sorcery for its force spike effect. As there's a Daring Skyjack, and Sidher going to pass the turn back. So, Precinct Captain kind of reigning supreme right now on this battlefield.
Yep. I was talking to Lundquist in between rounds, and he said that Precinct Captain was sort of, every time it stuck, and was connecting, you just won the game. And every time it didn't, it wouldn't have been any different than any other creature you could have played in that spot.
Okay.
So it's just a couple free wins you get to pick up here and there.
Sure. Now you see a Giant is going to come onto the table, but the important thing here to note is Precinct Captain is going to make him a 3/3 and they're going to get a 1/1 token, is that this is where a Johnny is huge, because of course it's going to be good in the white mirrors, but it's the fact that it has 5 loyalty.
It's real hard to kill.
That's so much loyalty.
Even if Ricky responds here with Spear or spending his turn to Boros Charm to finish off the Ajani, that's, I think, a very, very big swing for Lundquist.
Yeah, I think you're thrilled. If that's the exchange of resources, you are absolutely thrilled here if you're Lundquist. Because now Sidher's got a real problem on his hand. He's got a Planeswalker to deal with. He's going to start by playing the Temple of Triumph. He's going to get his Scry action on. I'm going to put the top card of his deck to the bottom. Let's see what he can do to kind of get himself out of this situation, because this thing can spiral out of control really quickly.
Yes. I would argue it already kind of has.
Yeah. It just changes the way that you have to play the game, like, immediately.
Yep. I think the most likely sequence here is just Judge's Familiar into a Johnny and Boros trying to finish it off, and that's a disastrous turn for Ricky here, because the Precinct Captain is still unchecked.
And you see Ricky says, all right, 1 to that. Not thrilled that I have to do this, but I can't let that sit on the table, so Boros Charm it. And if you're Ben, as we mentioned, you're pretty happy with this because your Precinct Captain is still reigning supreme.
Yep.
So Ben's going to untap his 3 lands. He's going to untap his 3/3 Precinct Captain. You see him draw Brave the Elements for the turn. He's got a Boros Charm of his own in his hand, a couple of lands as well in Sacred Foundry, and a Plains. I think his other card is another Brave the Elements, so this might be the only creature that he really does have, but again, as you mentioned, Precinct Captain, when it goes unchecked, that might just be enough.
Yep. And Precinct Captain and Brave the Elements sets up the potential for just an alpha strike, even if Ricky's able to stabilize this board at some point.
So Daring Sky just going to attempt to trade with Mutavault, and that looks like that's what's going to happen. Well, at least first strike damage is going to happen right now. So Precinct Captain, trigger, give me a token. All right, regular damage, I'm ready for a trade. So Mutavault trades with the Skyjack. 1 damage coming across from the Soldier. We'll see if Ben does have any sort of follow-up play here or not.
Appears yes. It appears his hand is Brave the Elements and a Boros Charm, so pretty powerful hand here for Lundquist.
And he plays a Soldier of the Pantheon and is going to pass the turn back here. So he is on the board in multiple ways, and things are looking good. As the only thing he has to worry about is just a boring old Judge's Familiar, which I'd like to believe is not too tough, as Ricky's going to draw himself. He's actually going to scry, excuse me. You see Ricky's hand. He has some Brave the Elements of his own in his hand, but it's kind of this weird game when Brave the Elements are staring back at each other. Because what Ben can easily do here, because Ben has to assume that Ricky's deck is very close to the composition of his own, is that Ben can just do something as simple as just go, all right, Brave the Elements white gets you for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then then Ricky's sitting at 4, he gets another token, and he can actually just use his falter effects right now.
Yes.
And if that is a Boros Charm that Lundquist doesn't have in his hand, that's actually going to be lethal, right? Because we're looking at an attack for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 11 minus 7 is 4. Boros Charm deals 4. So we could just look at a kill this turn. I guess Judge's Familiar might make things a little bit difficult. Yep. Be brave. Ricky says, that's fine. Give all my guys pro white. Ben says, here I come. So there is your attack for 7. Ben going to show Boros Charm. Ricky says counter it. And Ben says, there's my land. So I will pay for it, and you will die. So Ben Lundquist is going to win game number 1 over Ricky Sidher in pretty easy fashion, as both of those two are sharing a laugh.
Probably joking over the Boros Charm and the judge's familiar there at the end, I would imagine.
Yeah. So we'll take a look at the sideboards here. I have Ricky's in front of me, and Ricky will be on the play this game. So I see 1 Precinct Captain. Again, he's got 3 in his main, 1 in his board. A Pacifism, 4 Reckoners, 3 Glare of Heresies, 2 Gideon Champion of Justice, 2 Electrickery, 1 Mizium Mortars, 1 Assemble Legion. I'm looking at 15 cards that could conceivably come in right now.
Yes. I would say probably not Assemble. So we can, I guess we can call it 14. Still a ton.
Yeah,
a ton.
We're looking at a ton of cards here. How does Electrickery line up against Ben's deck?
Yes, Giant Militant, Boros Elite, Soldier of Pantheon, Daring Skyjack, Azorius Arrestor. So pretty good, I guess.
Okay, so 2 of those.
Pretty good.
Gideon obviously is great against opposing creature decks, so you're probably going to want those. Glare of Heresies playing against a white deck, you're probably going to want those. Reckoner, obviously great in this kind of matchup, probably going to want that. Pacifism is okay. Brave the Elements is going to knock it off, so maybe you don't want that because the creatures are so mediocre in this matchup that I think Pacifism might be kind of poor. The 4th Precinct Captain, well, we just saw what 1 can do. Might as well add a 4th one of your own.
The upside of Pacifism is not that Lundquist has it, but Pacifism is one of the better answers to Boros Reckoner. It's pretty hard to remove in other ways. So there's some upside to having it there. On Lundquist's side, he has a Pacifism, a Mortars, 2 Glares, a War Leader's Helix, and 3 Banisher Priests that he can bring in here as well. So he's got some tools, but I would say Ricky has definitely way more action in his sideboard than Lundquist does for this matchup.
Well, we know what these guys can bring in. The question is, what do they board out? And you're in this white and mirror match that, these creatures are going back and forth. I don't love Giant Militant in this matchup, that's for sure. The first card I would cut is 4 copies of Boros Charm. Okay. And then after that, just your low impact creatures. Okay. We're looking at low impact creature. I think Giant Militant's very low impact. I know that Ricky has Judge's Familiar on his side where Ben does not. I would want to cut that card. It's not going to have a huge effect in this matchup. Imposing Sovereign's a really interesting card because I think it can play a huge role in this matchup on Sidher's side of it, just having all of Ben's creatures come into play tapped, and then he can just keep pushing his advantage and, get that snowball effect going where Ben can never actually catch back up. I don't know if Daring Skyjack is good in this matchup because if it doesn't have flying, it's not great. And can you actually make sure that it has flying the whole time?
I think Daring Skyjack is one of those cards that's good in no matchups. It's kind of it's a necessary evil because you need to have this density of 1 and 2 mana creatures, and so you can't be too picky. It's maybe the 3rd best one or whatever.
Okay.
But there's a lot of cards, in mono red, like Foundry Denizen gets sideboarded out a lot because it's not very good.
How dare you?
At Magic. So you have to play it game 1 often because it's you have to have a saturation of inexpensive threats to have your deck do its thing. But in post-board games where you're playing against more resistance or there's more surgical cards you're bringing in for the matchup, often you're just taking out your worst card.
Sure.
It's not matchup specific. I think Daring Skyjack is that kind of card.
Sure. So we'll see exactly how both players do end up sideboarding here. It's kind of funny because you look at a card like Spirit of Heliod and white weenie mirrors of the past. It was the person who has the most crusade effects to go on with their creatures that ends up winning. That was part of the reason that many, back in my heyday, as it were, the Kithkin days, Johnny Goldmane was the nuts. The first person to play Johnny Goldmane, just flat won. Their Spectral Procession tokens were 2/2s. Obviously, Vigilance is a big deal, but there was really no coming back from that. Spirit Heliod is legendary, so it's this card that you can't play a ton of, but I feel like, if one player draws one where the other one doesn't, I think it's going to be the Spirit Heliod player that actually ends up winning.
Yeah, I think it's probably less dominating in this matchup than in your typical white weenie mirrors because so many of the creatures in both Ricky and Ben's decks are front heavy. So often what happens in Crusade mirror matches of the ones you're referring to is we all have 2/2s and 3/3s, and now when I have Crusade and you can't even block anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of the creatures here are Dryad Militants, Daring Skyjacks, Soldier of the Pantheon, Imposing Sovereign, things where you have Crusade and I don't. Well, my 2/1 can still block your 2/1 that's now become a 3/2.
Okay.
The more front heavy the creatures are, I think the less the Crusade matters because you can still trade if you're the person who doesn't have it. The more even statted or back heavy the creatures are in the matchup, the more the Crusade effects really become overwhelming.
All right, both players taking a look. They're going to keep, and Ricky's going to start off with a real one-drop this time. He's got Soldier of the Pantheon. We'll see what Lundquist is going to start off with here. He's got a Boros Sleep and he's going to pass the turn back. I wouldn't be surprised here, Patrick, to see trading early and often.
Yep.
Boros Sleep does take some assembly to get set up, as here's an opposing Sovereign, and Ricky's going to pass the turn back. So he gets Sovereign established. I don't know if he has another white source in his hand, because he does have Precinct Captain in his hand that he did not deploy this turn.
Yeah, he has Precinct Captain and Boros Reckoner, so he might be having some color mana issues in this game.
There is certainly a cost to playing those Mutavaults, as good as that card is, and this is definitely one of them.
He also doesn't have red mana, which is really troubling because a lot of his impactful sideboard cards here, the Mortars and the 2 copies of Electrickery especially, are require red mana. So
Lundquist's going to scry with that Temple of Triumph, and then he's going to play Soldier of the Pantheon that comes into play tap because of the Sovereign. You see Ricky is going to attack here with his creatures. This attack is kind of interesting. I think Ben is immediately going to try to trade, which he does get to. Ricky says, you take 2. I think Sidher, does have a backup imposing Sovereign in his hand, which he does. He's just going to pass the turn back. So doesn't want to trade a Brave the Elements for a Boros Sleep, which I agree with.
Yep. And Lundquist really wants to trade here. It's important not to take too many hits in the Boros Mirror, because then Brave the Elements just kills you. Trading both keeps your life total high and keeps the other player's board somewhat, contained.
Yep.
The more you take these hits and allow Ricky to just play out all of his creatures, the more you can be in a winning position, but the opponent just punks you out with Brave the Elements. So I really like that block from Lundquist for a variety of reasons.
So Ben's going to play his Plains as his land for the turn. He does have a Frontline Medic, Banisher Priest, and a Johnny as 3 drops to choose from for the turn. So this will be a little bit interesting to see what he's going to choose. He's going to go with a Banisher Priest. I think he says, give me the Imposing Sovereign as that comes into play tapped, and coming across for 2. So going to pass the turn back after we even things up at 18. Sidher draws a card. It's another Precinct Captain, and what that is not additional white mana.
Yep.
And Ben seems like, now that he's got everything online, now that his creatures are going to come and play untapped as opposed to tapped, now he can play defense and offense. And that's where things do really get tough here for Sidher.
And I really like Benjamin landing his Banisher Priest there while Ricky was tapped out, so there's no threat of Brave the Elements.
Yeah.
Because the upside of landing your Banisher Priest is so huge that even if maybe Johnny's marginally more powerful that turn, there's some upside into making your play that has the biggest liability against Brave the Elements when you have a window to do so.
See, Judge's Familiar going to come in. Lundquist's going to gain a life, as that is a multicolored spell. But you see kind of the issue here with Judge's Familiar, where it's just not that powerful of a card by itself. It does have the opportunity to trade with Soldier.
Sorry, I couldn't keep it together. When
truth hurts. It really does.
It's not that powerful by itself, and then in parentheses, or in concert with other cards.
So there's a scry. You see, again, Frontline Medic and a Johnny in hand. And a Johnny's going to cause a real problem in this game right now. But I think he's going to start off with Frontline Medic to get the Battalion online, because that's going to cause an even bigger problem.
Yeah, Lundquist really couldn't make a profitable attack if he +1 his Ajani this turn anyway, and he would risk having it get attacked on the way back. So build up your board a little bit, and especially with Ricky kind of fumbling around here, there's no reason to risk throwing away your Ajani for not that much in profit when the Frontline Medic is also incredibly powerful when backed up by Ajani next turn.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're going to build up your board, you might as well build up your board with maybe the best thing you can build your board up with, which is a card that's going to turn on Battalion, and the Battalion makes it so that there are no profitable blocks allowed. Frontline Medic, super interesting, because when you think of Frontline Medic, you think of that Naya Blitz deck from last season. And I think it was pretty good at the Pro Tour. If you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was okay at the Pro Tour Dragon's Maze.
I played 4 in my deck. It was really good.
Yeah.
Josh had 4 in his deck.
Yeah,
He top forward.
Just gonna say, it seemed like it was great then, and now it kind of just fell off the radar here. As there is a Johnny Call of Pride, and Ricky said, "No more, please stop. Give me my opposing Sovereign back. Make it stop." So we don't get to see a Battalion activation or trigger, as it were. But we do see Ben Lundquist win this match pretty easily, 2-0 in the Boros Mirror, and I feel like his Boros deck, between the two, just seems more refined.